All right, let's head over to the Zoom cloud here where we have Mr. Joe Sinnott on the line with us as I get my camera all ready here. How's Mr. Joe Sinnott, the host of the Energy Detox podcast and the CEO of Whitting Partners? How you doing today?
Jason, I am happy to report that things are good here in southwestern Pennsylvania today.
I'm taking a look at my screen and taking a look at your screen, and I think I need to either get a camera cleaning or upgrade my HD because it looks a little cloudy with a side of meatballs in here today. So,
Well, you
Joe
did just
Sinnott
say
out
you
in
were recording
Pittsburgh,
to the cloud,
Pennsylvania.
right? So, there you go.
That's and these clouds are going to be thirsty, from what I understand, with the water usage. Not only is there going to be a lot of power usage, but there's going to be some water usage as well. And we'll talk about the leadership into that at probably a different time. Unexpected results from your engineering department or your chemistry department or one of your research departments. And we'll get into that at a different time. But today we're going to talk about patience versus impulsivity. Impulsivity versus patience, I guess would be a way to phrase it. Also talk about the Shale Insights conference coming up here. Is that in September, Joe? Is that right?
Yeah, it's coming up mid-September.
And a few other conferences. Annual meetings are right around the corner as well. But NFL football as well. Pittsburgh Steelers country for Joe Sinnott. Minnesota Vikings country for myself. A lot of changes happening at the leadership role in terms of quarterback. All kinds of stuff to talk about today, Joe Sinnott. How about what's the latest podcast that you have that you would like to promote? Because we do like to give you an opportunity to talk about one of your most recent podcasts available at Whitting Partners, as well as your podcast platforms, whether it be Spotify or iHeartRadio or et cetera, et cetera. So give us a little bit of a recap of one of your latest podcasts.
Well, the last one I did was actually honoring, if you will, the 40th anniversary of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the release of the movie. And what prompted that was, well, not just the 40-year anniversary, but the fact that the Alamo actually purchased one of the bikes from the movie and was showcasing it down at the Alamo. Because for those of you familiar with the movie, of course, there's the infamous scene where Pee Wee Herman finally arrives at the Alamo to find his bike, which a psychic had told him was in the basement, and he learns, of course, there is no basement. So, anyway, turned that milestone anniversary celebration, if you will, into a very brief podcast playing off of two lines from the movie. One of those being, of course, I know you are, but what am I? And the other one being a scene where Pee Wee is speaking to someone named Simone and says, "Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt," with butt having one T and butt, of course, being, what's holding her back. So the podcast spends, again, just a couple minutes using those two lines as an opportunity for people to say, hey, one, who are you? What are you? Don't define it in terms of what other people are. Who are you? And then secondarily, what's holding you back from being that person and accomplishing the things that you are looking to accomplish?
Well, that's actually a good segue transition, if you will, into the impulsivity versus patience conversation that I'd like to have because as of right now, personally in my life, I'm going through some just some changes, whether it be a caterpillar into a butterfly. My son, 19 years old now, got his full-time job. He starts his career. He started his career. So he didn't go to college. He decided to go into the workforce full-time. The first go around, he realized he didn't like what that was as much as maybe some other things. But now, Joe, he's a full-time firefighter. He got hired as a firefighter, age 19. We're talking full-time salary. That's very good for a 25-year-old or 30-year-old, let alone a 19-year-old. He now has better insurance than me because he works for the city. So therefore he's got, I mean, we're talking about he's got himself into a position in life where I didn't think I would be emotionally, mentally, financially till he was 23, 25 years old, something like that. So this allows me to start that kind of that snowbird chapter, that kind of, that a quasi-retirement chapter, if you will. Obviously, not a full-fledged retirement, but once your kids leave the nest, you get the empty nest. You have newfound time. You have found energy where you can direct your certain, your different feelings, your different emotions, your different wants and needs. I got a dog, so therefore that single parent love goes mostly to the dog now. And now the kid comes in part time with our weekly lunches at the Indian food place. But what I've learned here as I start this next chapter, I technically, physically, geographically can't go too far till his December graduation date from the academy. And so I have to be patient, Joe. I'm forced to be patient. And because of that forcedness to be patient, I've learned that I was impulsive. Even when I thought I wasn't impulsive, I was impulsive because now that I'm sitting back and waiting on certain things, I'm getting more opportunity because I did not jump, if you will. I didn't go to the Alamo because I had the patience to realize, oh my God, they don't have a basement. Pee Wee didn't have the patience to really vet out and think through what it was. He was so focused on getting his bike. Somebody told him what he wanted to hear. And so he just took off. And that, honestly, Joe, that was me for a long time. I didn't realize it until probably this past year. Call it my year of Jubilee. Every 49 years, you're supposed to take a year of Jubilee. We'll call it that. Get a couple Catholics on the line here. Might actually resonate a little bit. But talk to me a little bit about that patience versus impulsivity, because, man, I didn't realize how close those two were related.
Yeah, that's a great, great way to weave all those things together, Jason. And of course, congrats. Certainly, as your son's father there, I no doubt sense some of the pride there of him growing up and going off on his own. So congrats on that. As for the patience, and again, I think I'm in a different season of life. So, my wife and I are, I think maybe somewhat impatiently waiting for not the kids to grow up, but at least the kids to get to the start of school here. We're only a couple days away. So, we're, I'd say, facing the same balance of, patience versus slowing down, enjoying these moments, listening to everybody around us that says, it goes so fast, right? So, this topic is, certainly relevant again in a different context for us. In terms of, what I see in the professional world, though, Jason, it's no different, especially in oil and gas, where things are go, go, go. It was just at an event last night where I had a similar conversation with somebody who said, how do you slow people down? Everybody knows it's an intense industry. So, how do you get motivated, again, in many cases, intense individuals in this industry to exercise patience, to stop for a second? And the short answer is, and again, it's more of almost a mechanical or logistical thing, is when I have a coaching relationship with somebody and we have time on the calendar, it forces them to slow down. And I hear that all the time, Jason. Joe, one of the best things I like about coaching is it forces me to stop, to take an hour to not do what I would normally do. And from that hour or whatever amount of time it is, there comes ideas and insights and revelations or opportunities that, again, wouldn't have otherwise appeared. And again, it has almost nothing to do with me and my ability to ask questions and coach. And it's really just having that extra time on the calendar for them to, again, exercise some of that patience, to slow down. Whatever, thousand things are on their mind, has to wait that amount of time. And so it's funny that, again, regardless of what I might bring to the table, literally just having that time on the calendar bears so much fruit for people that might be acting. Again, you've used the word impulsively, but it's true. Impulsively, impatiently, and again, I guess, this is a bit self-serving here, but unconsciously. Jason, you and I talk all the time about conscious leadership. My business, Winning Partners. The whole idea is that there's lots of people who are unwittingly making decisions, unwittingly, taking some sort of action that is short-sighted. That's not serving them well. So just having that time, whether it's because you have a coaching conversation or whether it's because your son is going off and moving on, to his own life, to his own world, whatever you can do to create that time to be patient, to think, and to not simply just go through the motions impulsively, all kinds of fruit will be born from that exercise, Jason.
I'll give you another plug here for the coaching syndicate, if you will, because part of the things I've been doing now more is talking to myself. And you mentioned that, that people mention that when you get your sessions, it slows them down. Well, in the past, when I've done coaching sessions, what I liked about it is I was able to talk through things, talk shop, if you will, with somebody that's going to direct me or keep me accountable or ask questions. And I found myself when I go on my walks and I start thinking about these next chapter things and the fact that I can't move ahead, well, overthinking, it's better than over drinking. And so that happens sometimes where I just keep going and going in my mind, and sometimes in the past, I'll be honest, it led to analysis by paralysis. And one of the reasons why I believe this time is a little bit different, and one of the things I see that maybe I've either grown from the past or maybe it's wisdom that's taken hold finally in my older years. But in the past, I would do analysis by paralysis. I mean, I'd end up in a fetal position, rocking back and forth in the corner, Joe, sometimes if I had too many things going on. But the patience has taught me to talk through it, even if it's in my mind or with my dog, if you will. So there's a plug for the coaching side of things, Joe, because I do think that is one of the more valuable sides of what you do. There is the slow down part. There is the exercises and the role playing and some of the workshops involved. But when you're at a certain level in life, you need to have shop talk. You just do. Your spouse can't bring it to you. A coworker, your employees can't. Your employees are paid to kiss your butt, for crying out loud. So sorry, I feel my soapbox starting, so I better climb down and hand the baton off to you, Joe. I'm becoming more self-aware now.
No, you're right. And again, you're right. It's not just carving out the time, but it's, yeah, how do you almost, forget the coaching thing, the self-talk thing. How do you improve your self-talk? And I'll give you two tools that actually just had this conversation with somebody who, you mentioned Jason, turning 50, right? There's a 51-year-old who, again, is trying to figure out some things in life and move through and what path, should he go down. And the two tools that I happily handed off to him are two simple questions. One of them is, so what? And the other one is, says who? And again, it can be difficult to ask those questions of yourself when you're in the moment and you're moving through and everything else, but to step back and say, all right, well, who says I need to go down this path? Who says that there is this rule or this expectation that I need to follow? That's critical because so often, again, you find yourself going down a path or taking some sort of action. And when challenged about, well, why are you doing that? It's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. So that's sort of the says who piece. And then the so what piece, Jason, is, well, what if you didn't complete that task right now? What if you set that aside? Again, what if you just stood up from your desk, left your to-do list for an hour and, went and walked outside? What would be the actual implications? Not just the vague sort of, I'm so busy, I gotta get this done. But what would be the specific, actual implications of you taking or not taking a certain action? That's that so what question. So again, easier said than done, especially when you're in the heat of the moment. But again, that's what I get to do a lot as a coach is say, all right, well, so what? Says who? And again, slow people down, inject a little bit more consciousness in their thinking and their actions, and again, get them to see that, hey, wait a second, there's probably some other paths or some other approaches here that I could, if not should, take.
And that happens often, especially in high level industries, because there are actual terms called like the rollout plan, if you will. There's launch dates, soft premieres, hard premieres. You have so many of these different deadlines that create these moments of springboarding, if you will. It's hard to wait sometimes. It's very hard to wait sometimes, especially in today's instant media world, instant results world, whether it be from us putting it on ourselves by engaging in social media and just the instant reaction that it brings. Because professionally, Joe, time is money. And that there is a flip side to that coin, which is, wasted time is money too. It's wasted money. Wasted time is wasted money. And I saw that there was a study that came out this week. Fortune magazine, Fortune brand, I guess. And there's no more magazines, there's no more newspapers. Everybody's just a content company, including you and me. Anybody with a phone is a content company just walking around, and their pets are more successful than the owners are in the content business. But that's another story. But the name of the publication, it used to be a magazine called Fortune. And they had a study that shown that AI was actually less productive in the workplace. And I kind of skimmed it a little bit, and it turned into basically a time deal where the information, yes, there's some issues there, but for people that are using it primarily for saving time on software platforms, yeah, that was a time saver. But overall, people found themselves using it for a therapist. They found themselves doing business plans that made no sense. South Park just last night or this morning, I guess, they have a brand new episode out, and they kind of integrate in AI with the episode where the woman asks the AI bot if a deep fried salad franchise is a good idea. And it shows how much the AI enables your idea by saying, "Oh, that's a great idea," and it gives "Oh, that's a healthy twist with just the right amount of fat," or something like that. And so this woman looks at the AI bot and just goes, "Oh no!" Like she realizes, "Oh, this is the ultimate enabler." And so, anyway, my point is that when we come to time and reaction, patience, that's where I'm going with all these different things as I kind of got into the AI side of things. And I invite everybody to go look at that article, by the way, because AI is the next chapter of life that we're all going into, whether we like it or not, from a grid standpoint, from a water use standpoint, from an office standpoint. So understanding how the early adapters are using it more for entertainment than they are for work at work is very much like the way social media has been used as well. So it's another toy at the workplace. So, Joe, whatever direction you want to go with that, that was a loaded shotgun because it just shot out in a whole bunch of directions there. So, time, money wasted. Go ahead.
Well, let's continue with the AI piece there. So I haven't read the article, but I'm going to check it out because that is something I'm seeing with AI. Whoever uses it, whether I'm using it or other people talking about their uses, which is that, and again, I haven't heard the word enabler, but that's perfect, right? Where you give something to AI, ChatGPT, whatever, and it's ready to go, right? It's ready to solve your problem and give you your answer, but it doesn't do a good job yet. And again, I think we'd be naive not to think that obviously these things aren't going to get better and better and better, but in its current state, so often it's just looking to solve your problem or give you your answer. And it doesn't, often ask for more clarification, hey, tell me more, or, you sure about that? Or, I'm not so sure, right? It's going to say, yes, that sounds great. Here's why, the deep fried salad or whatever the case was. So I think that is an important point right now, which is you need things that are going to actually cause you to stop, to think, to slow down. And clearly, it's not a unique observation that, AI, if not used properly, is going to cause us to think less, to not slow down, to just keep going because our answers are readily available. The solutions are readily available. We don't have to stop and think because we have a tool that can do it. So to your point, Jason, and I think for anybody listening, who or what is out there slowing you down, causing you to pause, even just momentarily? Saying, hey, tell me more about your request before I answer, right? I mean, again, for anybody listening, I'm sure everybody's used AI in some way, shape, or form. You ask a question, you get an answer. You very rarely get a follow-up question. You need to prompt it and say, oh, no, that's not exactly what I'm looking for. So I look forward to reading the article, Jason, but I think even without AI, we as humans are wired to just keep going. Or at least we're conditioned to keep going because of the world that we live in 2025 and the pace of things. And again, I say that, as we said earlier, as somebody who's focused on the world of oil and gas, where you're rewarded to get stuff done in a very timely manner. So No, I appreciate you sharing all that. And again, I'll reiterate again and again, anything or anyone that you can find that's going to give you pause to stop and think and inject some consciousness into your day is going to pay tremendous dividends.
I've noticed on the AI side, I use it for some editing, and I've gotten it pretty good on some areas. So there's, like I said, it's pretty productive. But every now and then, maybe like quarterly, they must do some upgrades, because I notice on one side there certain elements get better, but then I have to go and kind of retrain it again, or it slips back to where I have to kind of I have to manage the AI. That's a fair statement. I've had to learn how to manage the AI to become productive with it, because it keeps me on my toes with certain things. Twice I've had to actually type, "Please don't gaslight me," because it will it will say, the way it responds is, it's like it's smiling. It's always so polite, and then it says that it's fixed the problem, and then asks me if I'd like to do something else. So then it redirects me. And to your point, it keeps it moving. It keeps it moving. And that is the one thing I've noticed with the AI. It always keeps me moving. The end is to keep me moving. And of course, whether we've shared our faith paths in the past, whether it be Notre Dame or Catholic schools or whatever, that type of thing, to where in the Bible it says, humans are wanderers. And whether we're spiritual and we come from energy, energy keeps moving. It's never stagnant. It just keeps moving and moving. So you're right about that, Joe, that humans, we're just meant to keep moving and moving. And that is the one early adaptation I've noticed with AI, is it's very complementary. It's a yes man or a yes woman. It's an enabler, but it also keeps going. So you can get gaslit by the AI. It can gaslight you to where, oh, okay, I'll just accept this incorrect information and move on. And so it's kind of interesting on that standpoint. But um, we can dive into that at a different time. I don't know if you got anything to say on that or not, but it's kind of a different topic. But
Well, I will have something to say because you just mentioned gaslighting, and I lit up here, pun somewhat intended, because actually, here in a couple weeks, Shale Insight is returning to Erie, Pennsylvania. A big conference here. Several hundred people gathered to discuss and really dive into all things Marcellus Shale, especially focused on the state of Pennsylvania. And in conjunction with that, and a sponsorship of a happy hour that I and other companies will be doing for the Women's Energy Network chapters here surrounding the Marcellus Shale. I'll be actually focusing on gaslighting, Jason. So kind of playing off of the original gas lights from 200 years ago, stemming from the Fredonia, New York well that again turned into using the gas there from an early well to light some streets there, and tying that into the concept of unwitting gaslighting in leadership, in oil and gas, and how often, we might be unconsciously gaslighting others and boosting our awareness of when we're gaslighting, or in the case of AI, Jason, when we are being gaslit, when we are being enabled, when we're surrounded by, yes men and yes women who, again, aren't just saying yes because, they're trying to make us happy, but they're trying to steer us in a direction that, maybe doesn't align with reality, right? They're sending us down a path that is not, again, a path that is going to lead us anywhere positive. But again, they're doing it perhaps either out of malice, or in many cases, they're doing it unconsciously. So again, bit of a preview of, what will certainly be a future podcast episode or two. And again, some themes that will manifest themselves at the Women's Energy Network Shale Insight Happy Hour. That'll be occurring on Wednesday, September 17th, up in Erie, Pennsylvania.
well, I don't want to tell you how to do your business, but gaslighting in the office, that is a conversation that is under discussed. And I think a conference could be sold out because of that. There's so many studies that have shown that the world we live in enables the narcissist and the gaslighters to really thrive in today's world. In fact, in the even yeah. And so whether it be politics or whether it be corporate America, whatever the case is. And for me, I'm a Gen X, Generation X. So we're skeptical, man. You know what I mean? We've got our issues and all kinds of things. But the one thing that I learned as a Gen Xer, and I mean it's so funny because this is such a unique concept today, and it's so rare, and it's called critical thinking. It's where you take both sides and you think about it, and you decide what information is best suited for your life, and that's how you make the decision and move forward. And so many people now, they just listen to one side, and then they decide how to mold their life with that one side. And I'm telling you, it's something that we learned as a Gen Xer, Joe. And I really think that the current generations could learn something. It's called critical thinking, Joe. Look it up. I think that I think your whole profession could benefit from it, Joe. I'm being a little snarky now. So anyway, I do think though that critical thinking is lost. It's a lost art in today's day and age.
I do not disagree, Jason. Yes, I think that's oh boy. Yeah, think about a world, think about if critical thinking was injected into 2025, again, just from a very, neutral, objective standpoint. Think about it, no pun intended. Think about the implications, right? Think about the news, the media, obviously, social media, the conversations that you have with your peers, with children, whatever, just if we were forced to inject just a bit. Well, you got me thinking here again, pun somewhat intended. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we could dream, right? And I theoretically, as you said, perhaps we can take some effort to inject a bit more, make critical thinking great again, some sort of initiative there.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because it's probably George Bush that you could blame when he came out and said you're either with us or you're against us, because that's kind of the opposite of critical thinking. You're either with us or against us is that there's only one way to go with this. We've already thought for you. And critical thinking, of course, is like I said, as a Libra, which I am, I mean, we're born as critical thinkers because we have this mental game of ping pong that goes on in our head with every single topic out there. And that's why you can end up in the corner in the fetal position because you just, analysis by paralysis, and overthinking leads to over drinking, and all kinds of different things come out of that with the mind. But Shale Insights, you mentioned. Let's give that a plug. I noticed on social media that you're going to be moderating an event as well coming up here. Are those separate or are those two related? Yeah, the Shale Insights and then the moderation. Oh, that's for the Society of Petroleum Engineers, right? The moderation event.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting all there's a couple different SPE events. Yeah, so yes, I'll be moderating another one of your SPE Tech Talks. So I think this will be somewhere in the, I don't know what number I'm on, 60 something here, but yeah, that'll be another live rendition of SPE Tech Talk where they bring in technical experts, technologies that are all, connected in some ways to the oil and gas industry, and, give them 30 minutes to have a live Q&A basically with me and anybody else that wants to share their questions about these new technologies. So it's a great forum. Again, it's live. It's meant to be accessible to anybody around the world. You don't have to be a member of SPE to join in. So yeah, I have one of those coming up, and then you had me a little confused there because I didn't think it was promoted yet. But then locally here, the SPE Pittsburgh chapter here in October, I'll be leading a landman-based leadership conversation, with Landman being, of course, the Paramount Plus series that We'll be kicking off season 2 here in November. So this is a workshop I've been giving in different forms to different companies. This is going to be a public rendition, I think the first public rendition of this landman-based leadership workshop that injects all kinds of insights and fun and quotes and themes from Billy Bob Thornton and the whole cast of characters there, and boils them down to oil field proven tactics and tools that folks can use from a communication standpoint, from a decision-making standpoint, from a confidence standpoint to, be more effective and be more, if you're so inclined, Billy Bob Thornton like.
Landman. All right. We'll have to discuss that more. We're discussing having a kind of a industry-wide premiere party for Landman 2. And, just be where basically people get together in the different shale plays. So like in your neck of the woods, Pittsburgh would make the most sense. People can get together and then we'd connect via the social media platforms and have a little bit of a landman deal, and reaching out to Paramount to see if they can provide any sort of actors or actresses to maybe pre-record a statement or two. If they could do it live, that would be great. But, beggars can't be choosers. And getting any, Billy Bob saying, hey, thanks for coming out would be fantastic. Something along those lines just to motivate the crowd. Landman 2, available Paramount in November. The discount links are available here within the show pages. You can get those as well. Shale Insights is coming up. That's in September. I'm going to be in Kansas. Got invited to co-keynote a speech. It's either the first night or the second night. It's a two-day event in eastern Kansas. We're going to be discussing how the media has handled the oil and gas industry over the years. So we'll start with back when you could shoot the ground and it would bubble out, and you got, Rags to Riches and James Dean with Giant and Beverly Hillbillies, and all of a sudden Dallas came and it got mainstream, but boy, the greed came out, and pretty soon oil was the new evil, billionaire type person, to where now it's the new cigarettes, if you will. So we're going to kind of go through the evolution a little bit and discuss different ways on how we can we as an industry, just combat some of the realities that's going on in the lexicon of our modern society and culture. It's interesting, by the way, getting back to AI, it's interesting how much it leans towards the climate conversation. When you ask it questions related to energy, it is not pro fossil fuel by any stretch. At least the chat GPT, Grand Theft Auto. So I forget, because Grand Theft Auto got me confused on the chat GPT. I get them mixed up. And yeah. And I found that interesting. There's a little bit of a AI discrimination that happens as well. So you have to be very specific on certain things to ask it if you want to get neutral conversations, or if you want to get something that's not leading. But anyway, sorry, I jump ahead a little bit. Shale Insights, talk about that. What you got going on? Give us a little bit of a plug on what do you think's happening with that event this year?
Well, the good thing is I don't have to speculate, because the Shale Insight event, September 16th through the 18th in Erie. This will be, fourth or fifth year in a row up in Erie. Shale Insight itself, the conference, has been going on much longer than that, but again, it's been in Erie for the last several years. And I don't know how many people show up here, but I mean, I think it's safe to say it is the premier conference when it comes to Marcellus shale development here in Pennsylvania. So you'll have leaders from across the industry. You can see the lineup on the Shale Insight website in terms of the heavy hitters that will be there to, again, not just give a company update, but actually share some insights, pun fully intended, about what the future of the industry holds and how it's connected to Pennsylvania in particular, and more broadly the Marcellus shale. So with the rapid, and again, going back to prior conversations, Jason, about, how fast things can move, things are moving very fast when it comes to AI and the development of data centers. And so no doubt at this Shale Insight conference, you could probably do a bit of a drinking game when it comes to, how often data centers are mentioned, right? How often LNG, another big potential or certainly ongoing draw of natural gas and use, is said. So there's a lot of these things converging, Jason, in terms of, where natural gas will go, what it means for the future of the industry, and again, a lot of conversation about what it means for Pennsylvania and Pennsylvanians. You don't have to be a direct member of the industry, of course, to feel the benefits. And that's another thing that, Shale Insight brings forth. So you talked about, media's historical coverage of the oil and gas industry. Well, one very good thing that the Marcellus Shale Coalition, who produces the Shale Insight Conference, does is make sure that the truth about the real impacts of natural gas development here in Pennsylvania on all Pennsylvanians is front and center, right? There's no excuse for anybody, especially people in the industry, not to be able to tout the $1 trillion in health benefits that have come about because of natural gas, the thousands of dollars a year that families have saved in electricity generation or electricity usage, and certainly the use of natural gas to heat their homes and cook their food because of natural gas development in Pennsylvania. And again, I'm not here to just tout all of those stats, but to say that Shale Insight is a good opportunity to make sure that anybody that wants to know anything about the industry is on the same page about the facts, the realities of the natural gas industry, what it's done here, especially over the last 20 years of Marcellus development, and what it stands to do over the coming decades here in Pennsylvania. So again, if that, has any appeal or any interest to anybody, in addition, of course, to being able to connect to, hundreds of other individuals who are connected to the industry, then again, I fully encourage people to head up to Erie. Again, that's mid-September, September 16th to the 18th. And while you're there, of course, head on over to the free to anybody, whether you're attending Shale Insight or not, Women's Energy Network Happy Hour that I've been proudly sponsoring for the last several years. It's a great event on the rooftop of a bar there, a restaurant there, right on the bayfront, across from Lake Erie. And a tremendous event, tremendous location, especially in mid-September, here to showcase what Western Pennsylvania has to offer, not just in terms of our energy, Jason, but in terms of our natural gifts that we have for Lake Erie and the surrounding area, which is spectacular again, especially that time of year.
So this is a conference, right? And the reason, let me preface that a little bit. Right now, there's a lot of annual meetings going on, and they're kind of a hybrid conference annual meeting. So you go and you golf, probably have a dinner. The next day, there's some booths, not anything close to like, what a full-on expo or convention type of a thing is in the oil and gas industry. The Shale Insight, plural, not insights, but insight, plural. I'm sorry, singular. That's a conference, right? This is a conference.
Yes,
not an annual meeting.
Correct. This is a conference open to anybody. You do not need to be a member
Yeah.
of the Marcellus Shale Coalition to come to this conference. And again, everything is out there. This isn't some top secret event either. The agenda's there. The list of speakers is there. When you join, you get, they got a nice app there. You could see, all the attendees that are going to be going. So this is absolutely out in the open. There's typically a fair amount of media coverage, not just during election season, because obviously, especially on those even years there when there's more things on the ballot. It attracts some pretty significant heavy hitters in the world of politics, and in turn attracts media. So, President Trump has spoken in the past at Shale Insight Conference. Certainly, we've had multiple Senate candidates come through there and again, make their pitch on both sides of the aisle. So, yeah, Jason, it is open to everybody. It is truly a conference. And again, I'll admit my bias here, being in Pennsylvania, being a member of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. But one of the reasons I joined the Marcellus Shale Coalition is because I went to Shale Insight Conference at the end of 2021, coming out of COVID. And again, I've been to a lot of conferences. I've been to a lot of these type of things, Jason, and it was clearly a level above, sort of your standard out of the box conference that you might get regardless of your industry. So again, could not encourage folks anymore to go to sign up. Certainly, if you're interested, to go get your hotel room too locked in well in advance because it is a popular event. I think it continues to grow in popularity because again, people see the value in it. So again, September 16th to the 18th in Erie at the Bayfront Convention Center.
CEO and President to Expand Energy, CEO, President, American Gas Association, CEO, President, Southern Company Gas. Taking a look at some of the speakers and titles that are going to be notable speakers, if you will, taking a look at it. So, yeah, it looks like there's going to be some heavy hitters there talking about a variety of things from innovation to regulation to kind of what's next in terms of the different energies involved. And all right, September
Yeah.
17th.
And I'll point you to Jason. Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
as you scroll through the agenda, it's not just those, again, heavy hitters, big names coming up on stage and delivering their message, but there is a tremendous number of breakout sessions where you get to kind of choose your own adventure, right? So there's, smaller forums, you go in, more question and answer, multiple people sitting on a panel having a conversation. And again, attendees get to choose which ones they want to go to. They're welcome to, even if there's overlap, they can pop into a couple minutes of one, pop into a couple minutes of another, and then step out and continue the conversation, continue networking. So again, a lot of flexibility built in. So it's not just showing up and again, listening to people talk for, well, it covers 3 days, probably 2 days worth of content. But at any rate, Jason, a lot of
I'm going to
opportunities for
mention
people to
one
learn
here,
about
Joe.
the industry.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just saw one here on the breakout sessions, midday, September 17th. And, we mentioned the data centers. We mentioned the technology showcase, the regulatory compliance. Those are great breakout sessions that, specific individuals and, certain departments can go. Here's one that's on there that I'm going to highlight that I really think that people should have number one, even above data centers. Because the truth behind the data centers, I mean, those are, unless you got a pretty clear path, that's Google. That's Meta. I mean, there's a handful of people that are doing these. So it's not like, the small rags to riches entrepreneur is getting a lot with these data centers. You might get some crumbs and you might get some business along the way, but the main thrust and the main part of it are these major corporations that are kind of leading the data center charge. I'm sure there'll be micro data centers that'll be more available for individuals like yourself and me, Joe, which would be the small business of life. But where small businesses can really benefit is the municipal relations. Now, whoever decided to do this breakout session deserves a raise. Municipal relations. This is the number one business development trend for the new world in terms of business. Now, I don't care if you're in the energy business or you're the WWF, okay? The WWE, sorry, the World Wrestling Entertainment, they were going to go to New Orleans for WrestleMania next year, okay, Joe? Las Vegas had them this year. And by the way, cities are now paying the WWE to come. That's what I'm talking about with municipal relations. If you sit down and actually go through the municipal relations, they've got money for you to come, whether it's to relocate. It might be, it's not going to cover your whole expense, but it's going to alleviate some of the expenses that you may have that's in the risk category. In the way of the WWE in Las Vegas, for example, for Vegas, they did it over Easter weekend. Business is down 50% across the board in Las Vegas for Easter weekend. Guess what? They did over 125% because a bunch of people came for 2 nights to watch a bunch of choreographed ballet in the ring, known as wrestling, as a performance art, but they come from all over the world. So what Vegas did is they told WWE, we want you again. And they gave them more money And Vegas actually told New Orleans, sorry, we have a contract with you. They gave us more money. We'll come see you the year after. So municipal has a huge part of doing business, whether you're in the technology that's doing the tracking, because water tracking and energy tracking and sustainable energy tracking, that's a thing in the software business. That's a thing in the technology world. But Joe, whoever came up with this breakout session, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because departments, governments have sustainability departments now within their organization. We just had somebody on This Week in Energy 2 weeks ago from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they've got like millions of dollars to try these pilot projects when it comes to sustainable energy. I'm a stone's throw away from Fergus Falls, Minnesota, population 10,000 maybe, 15,000 maybe, 150,000 during the lakes area, or during the lake season, but during the winter, there ain't anybody around. They have a sustainable energy department now. I just brand new director they hired, at the beginning of the year type of thing. So this is the next wave of business. And so I'm not here as a paid advertisement for the Insight Coalition or for the event or anything, but I just saw that and I really wanted to highlight that, Joe, because that is the next stage of business. That is the way, the public-private partnerships of business, if you will. That's kind of that new age. Anyway, sorry, you can interject or you can tell me to good day or whatever.
Hey, I think you're spot on, Jason. I mean, it's relationships, whether you're talking about things at the scale of, WWE and WrestleMania in Las Vegas, or you're talking about a much smaller scale. And when I say smaller scale, I mean, lots of small municipalities. Obviously, they're not in a position to dish out millions of dollars to invite business to come into their neighborhoods. But collectively, and again, if you look at the sponsor of that particular breakout session that I found here as you were talking, that's, PSATs. So, it's a collection of township supervisors. So all of these smaller entities that, again, alone might not have the resources to form these super strong relationships with business, but collectively, there are best practices on their end from a township supervisor standpoint. And then obviously, the point of the breakout here geared more towards the actual operators and contractors and companies that are working in all of these different towns and townships and municipalities throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to, make sure that they have best practices so that it's, again, as cliche as it sounds, Jason, a win-win. This isn't, this, natural gas development should not be viewed as some necessary evil that township supervisors and government officials, need to hold at bay and make sure that they're doing the bare minimum and everything else. No, it's the opposite, right? It should be, hey, how does everybody benefit? How does everybody win? How does this turn out to be a clear net positive for all stakeholders? And so as we move beyond mere natural gas development to, as you pointed out, data centers, and what that means from an infrastructure standpoint, from an activity standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, from a job standpoint, there are going to be best practices that both the government side and the private industry side could and should follow to make sure that the whatever we have 12, 13 million residents of Pennsylvania can all benefit. So I agree with you. This is one of many valuable breakout sessions, but one that has been and will continue to be important. That being the relationship between all parties involved and a shared recognition that, we can all march towards some, end goal, which is, prosperity, flourishing, and making sure that, we can take full advantage of the resources that are underneath our feet. And in the case of data centers, certainly above our feet as well.
All right, as we wrap up here, Joe Sinnott, Whitting Partners, host of the Energy Detox podcast. We are sports fans, and so we like to somewhat tie in some sports-related conversation because so much of coaching is actually relatable to coaching. Well, look at that. When I look at where you're from in the Pittsburgh area, obviously the veteran coming in, trying to learn the new system, and the new system trying to adapt to the veteran. that is a common theme, Joe. Whether you're in oil and gas, we just talked about the new sustainability departments. I mean, there are so many new changes that have happened to where the old dog has got to learn new tricks. That's just the way it goes. The new ways are not necessarily conforming to the old person. The old person is having to conform to the new ways. And when you think about coaching, Joe, I don't know if it's always been that way. I mean, it seems like it comes in like waves, like the railroad comes, the internet comes, and now we have this kind of this new carbon tracking wave coming. And it's Y2K, not really. We have so many of these things that we ignore, but every so often there is a paradigm shift. And in the NFL, it's changed so much that organizations are no longer changing to work around Aaron Rodgers anymore. Aaron Rodgers has now got to change to fit that system. Yeah, they might adapt a little bit to each other, but the main thrust is that way. So, how would you coach something like that where you have to tell the veteran, sorry, man, you got to change. You've got to change your ways. Stay who you are, but you have to change these parts of you to become a team player now on our organization, because your leadership skills now need to be a role player. That's how you're going to show your leadership, is you are going to become a role player in the organization. So I just actually loaded a lot more than I thought into that, Joe. I really did. I didn't even realize that, because that's a whole other vein when the leader has to show his leadership by becoming a role player. That's very common in basketball, but in football. So I'll step down and you can take over the coaching baton at this point.
Got it. Well, again, there's a lot there, but let's jump straight into Aaron Rodgers, because I heard him talking for a while actually on sports radio yesterday. So it was I don't know what the context was, but you got to hear a lot of, felt like, pretty real comments from Aaron Rodgers, and what he revealed, or at least what I heard, Jason, was his clear recognition that you need to connect with the people. So, all of the conversation that I heard, again, it was a snippet, a fairly long snippet, but, a snippet about his interactions, going out to dinner with the team, how, he appreciated, it was their first preseason game was on the road, and how, being on the road gave him more time to connect, and talking about how he's, texting the wide receivers and everybody else. And it was clear that, this veteran presence recognized that, he doesn't have to worry as much about the system, Jason, right? It's easy to talk about how's he going to fit into our system. You think about management, and you think about leadership, and then the owners, the Rooneys, and how is it all going to fit in, and even the coaches, right? How is he going to interact with Mike Tomlin and their offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, and all this type of stuff? Is he going to fit in? But here, again, what I heard, or at least what sports radio chose to showcase, was his relationship with his new teammates. And so that's, you talk about coaching, what I would coach any sort of veteran presence on, if they're moving into a new system, is to do just that, to not worry about the system, to go straight to the people that you're tasked with leading or influencing, or at least working with. And listen, you go out to dinner, you create those relationships. Again, connecting back to what you just pointed out regarding, industry needing to have relationships with municipalities. Start with those relationships, not the big picture. From a Pennsylvania state, standpoint, yeah, you got to worry about, state government and the governor and all that. But, at the end of the day, who are the people you're going to be working with day in and day out? It's the township officials, right? It's the local residents. And so if you can recognize that as a leader or as a businessman or whatever position you're in, you're going to be much better suited to, navigate whatever challenge comes up, instead of trying to fight some sort of vague, ubiquitous, system. Start at the ground level, start at the front lines, do what Aaron Rodgers is seemingly doing, build trust with the people you're going to be playing with, and, kind of set aside everything else. So that would be my advice for anybody transitioning to that position. I don't think Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he needs my advice or would care what my advice is. But again, it seems like he's doing exactly what I would encourage anybody to do in his position, Jason.
in Ohio, there's quite a bit of chatter with the quarterback situation in Cleveland. Joe Flacco announced as a starting quarterback, and nobody cared because everybody wants to know who's the backup. Is it Shadur Sanders? Is it Dylan Gabriel? Is that the other gentleman's name who was drafted ahead of Shadur Sanders? And then you have Kenny Pickett, who I believe graduated from Pitt University, which is where you're at, and then had a cup of coffee with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then went on to win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that's one of the more funny parts of Kenny Pickett's life and career is he won a Super Bowl. So they have two Super Bowl winning quarterbacks on the Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. And everybody's talking about Shadur Sanders, who's the fourth stringer. We've seen this before. Tim Tebow comes to mind right away. Colin Kaepernick would be another one that comes to mind where the backup quarterback gets more headlines than the starter. And in the world of business, that can happen. Sometimes, the younger professional just naturally has his brighter peacock flowers or feathers, brighter peacock feathers. They might not necessarily be filled into their role yet. They've got some potential and some building still, but their energy, that it factor, and like I say, the peacock feathers, they're so bright that the media and the social media and the people in the community, they can't help but look. And that can create a problem in organizations, Joe. It really can, because like I said, with Tim Tebow and with Kaepernick, great examples of backup quarterbacks people didn't want, not because of his talent, but because you don't want your backup quarterback getting more headlines and more publicity than your starter. And that's a real issue at times. Like I said, in the business world, hey, the young hotshot comes in and boy, he's got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of flair. But the old guard doesn't like that. Takes away their focus, takes away focus from the team. So anyway, have you experienced that in the corporate world where, the peacock feathers, if you will?
Oh my, that's that is a very common element. Again, I certainly saw it in my former life there, working in more traditional corporate roles, and certainly now, from a coaching standpoint, where, I get sent a lot of high potential, call it younger, fresher individuals who are exactly what you're talking about, Jason. I mean, they're in that position for a reason, right? The spotlight is on them for a reason. The peacock feathers, if you will, are there, for good reason. But so often, Jason, as you put it, there's this undertone that, those individuals might not be fully aware of. And sometimes maybe they are aware of it, and then there's kind of two ways to deal with it. One is like, how do I overcome the fact that I've been, sometimes put on this pedestal and still need to move forward, still need to do my job? Like, am I supposed to just, screw up so people can see that I'm human? Or there's those who say, screw it, I don't care what other people think, and I'm just going to keep doing my own thing. And, both of those paths are not necessarily the most, fruitful. So from a coaching standpoint, a lot of it comes down to, all right, strategically, how do you form those relationships? Not to beat a dead horse here, Jason, but it comes back to, how do you cut through the narrative, the story, the people propping you up and people trying to tear you down? How do you cut through that? Well, you form individual relationships with the people you're working with. Go on a little road show some humility, ask some questions, and do it in a genuine way. Don't go out there and say, hey, I'm trying to form these connections so that I can go forth and be that peacock and have that spotlight and feel like, hey, now everybody's on my same page. No, do it to truly build those relationships, learn what you don't know. And again, this might all sound really cliche, Jason, but I see it all the time and I see it handled very poorly. And again, it's not necessarily handled poorly from the individual, the Shador Sanders of the world. It's handled poorly from senior leadership who have put these rising stars in a very difficult position, even though senior leadership has the best of intentions, which of course is to, give this person opportunities and take full advantage of the potential. So long answer to your question of whether I see it, Jason, which is yes. But it, kind of bears sharing a bit more color about the situation because You want to talk about playing to a company's strengths, taking full advantage of those rising stars, those high potential individuals. Well, there's effective ways to do that. And unfortunately, there's lots of ineffective ways to do it. And fortunately, again, when I'm paired with some of those high potential individuals or the senior leaders who might be not handling this ideally, there are some practical ways to kind of change the tone and move forward in a way that, again, benefits all stakeholders.
Boy, you just gave me a great idea for our next podcast topic, stemming off of the bright young go getter who sometimes can't read the room necessarily, whether it be just from their own blindness or just because they're being enabled to not read the room, whatever it might be. But so often there are a lot of leaders. We talked about the gaslighting leadership. We talked about some of the toxic leadership that a lot of systems have really allowed to grow. One of them, in my opinion, is the tear down leadership, where they tear you down and then they rebuild you in their image. And I mean, there's a lot of psychological that goes into that too, but that's a common one, and that actually can probably be one of the most devastating to that young up and coming star, the young go getter. They get broken down. A lot of them aren't used to that, Joe. They're not used to that. The reason they've got such bright colors is because nobody's ever really broken them down in a way that is unhealthy, if you will, because it's a breakdown that shouldn't be needed. So it's an unhealthy one. It's a manufactured one. And sometimes that can be extremely dangerous to somebody. In the world of football, this is a kind of an analogy to so that somebody listening can try to understand what it might be like. When I was growing up, there was a quarterback who got drafted by the Oakland Raiders, might even been Los Angeles Raiders. And he went to USC, University of Southern California. His name was Todd Marinovich. Todd Marinovich, go look him up. His parents were overprotective helicopter soccer parents to where he hadn't even had a Big Mac up all the way through college. And so he was the poster child of the person that tried drugs for the first time, tried fast food for the first time, tried sex for the first time, tried alcohol for the first time in college, and never looked back and just partied that contract away. And, that's so there is some precedent to that, to where if somebody's not used to being broken down or a Big Mac or a taste of alcohol, sometimes, keeping them from that can have that effect on them. And there's no right or wrong answer on that, Joe. That's just kind of the way life goes. But anyway, a little preview for next time. I'd love to talk about the tear down. I imagine that's common too, Joe, that this leadership style, the tear down, build back up leadership style.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I'll, quick aside or preview for, again, a future conversation. What I see though often, Jason, is the tear down without some sort of end goal. So it's, hey, this is a necessary sort of, rite of passage to again, tear down that leader who hasn't been exposed or doesn't know what he doesn't know or whatever. But it's also a question of, well, to what end? What is the ultimate goal? What does success look like in the long term? So even in the example you're talking about, if his parents, in his formative years, had some sort of end goal that, you wanted him to be strong, resilient, able to navigate the world. Theoretically, there might have been a greater chance that, hey, he would have been exposed to Big Macs and risks and been, maybe had a little bit longer leash there in his formative years. Again, if his parents could have articulated what the long-term vision was. But in the absence of that, you don't see that these things can be restrictive and limiting. So, that's part of the, I don't want to say antidote, but it's a prerequisite for, whether you're tearing somebody down or whether they're in their formative years, whether it's a child or, again, somebody new to an organization. You still need to do a bit of reverse engineering, Jason, to make sure that you're not just applying rules and tearing things down or protecting people without some, again, end goal in mind. So again, look forward to having that conversation at some point down the road, but definitely a worthwhile one to have because it's certainly a pattern that exists in the business world and I argue in the non-business world as well.
I never thought of that. That's probably one of the worst managers out there. The tear down, and then after they tear him down, all right, he could just figure it out as he goes. Let him figure out on how to rebuild himself in this toxic environment. Go nuts. That is a common leadership style right now. So I'm glad that you are starting to do some of these modern day discussions like the gaslighting and some of the narcissistic tendencies that we do see in many leadership areas. So congrats on that. Joe Sinnott with Winning Partners. Energy Detox is the name of the podcast. If you want to check it out, it's available all the different podcast locations as well as YouTube's and the other different places. Any final thoughts, Joe?
No, Jason, I think we've covered all kinds of. You gave me a lot to think about here. This will take some time to digest here after this conversation. So, no additional thoughts, just the normal invitation to anybody out there. If you do want to continue the conversation and build on any of the, I don't know how many themes we covered today, Jason, feel free to reach out. Again, winningpartners.com. Always happy to connect on LinkedIn, have that conversation, and again, build on all the wonderful things that we tend to cover here on the Crude Life, Jason.
And I should mention, because I forget constantly, that we do have discount links available for Paramount Plus. Season 2 Landman coming out in November. We get a few cents, a few coins trickle down into our coffee can if you go ahead and use the discount links available through Paramount Plus. Jason Spiess is my name. That is Joe Sinnott, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks here, folks.